Welcome to practical exercise number 8 and its first supporting lecture on evaluation methods. As you notice on the slide, it says managing employees' performance, linking and aligning employees' performance to organizational success. Remember, human resource management is at the lower individual level, but that means nothing unless it can be linked to its team organization objectives and making it an integrated whole. So let's see how we can do that with our evaluation methods. This module has 3 chapters. We're starting with Chapter 8 on evaluation, but the module also includes Chapter 9 on development, plus Chapter 10, which actually has 3 major sections: retaining, disciplining, and separating. Let's talk about an integrated whole. We have these functions listed by chapters, but let's take away the chapters. And we're now looking at the 5 human resource functions: evaluation, development, retaining, discipline, and separating. We're going to use evaluation as a foundation that can support the other functions. Our evaluation can support retaining, who's staying, focusing on our workforce to provide empowerment, engagement, and job designs that support the organizational goals. We use evaluation for supporting development, who's moving up or over, who has the potential for doing more for the organization at a higher level or an adjacent level. We'd like a return on investment for developing employees. Looking to the right, our evaluation can support discipline for either progressive or immediate discipline. Who's iffy? Who has identified themselves as a management problem? Which then leads us to the far right in separations. Evaluations may help us for retirement, career development, people moving along, downsizing. We have more faces than spaces, and we have to evaluate who goes. And then also for cause. Who might need an immediate discharge because of discipline? So in reality, as we go through the module, think of practical exercises 8, 9, and 10 as an integrated whole. Thank you. Practical exercise number 8 has 5 subtasks, as shown on the slide. Also with each subtask is the text's learning objective and the supporting reading pages. Practical exercise number 8's template slides has this one slide, which is a combination of 3 of the subtasks. You're welcome to make your own slides or use the slides that are in the template. Just let your eyes drift in the upper left. We have subtask A on recommending methods and the justification. On the right-hand side, we have performance decision criteria, 8B. And then what are the 3 purposes for evaluation? And there's task 8C and the 3 subgroups that you'll be able to work with. This is an example slide I developed to support my information and referral organization and how they'll evaluate the assistant INR supervisor. We'll provide a lot more information as we go along, but this is kind of where we're going to. The key takeaway here is rather than pick only one evaluation method, I'm going to use 3. You could use more than one if you so desire. What makes sense for your organization and its focus jobs evaluation? In your template slide deck, you actually have this slide also, and it'll hold up to 5 methods for evaluation. Again, how many and what types would make sense for your organization and your focus jobs evaluation. Let's begin practical exercise number 8 with subtask A. What is the organization's type of employee performance management system for your focus job? We're now deciding how to fill out the left column of our template slide. What are the recommended method or methods? And let's take a look at 5 options. The 5 options we'll discuss starting at the top and going clockwise will be comparing or ranking. And then we'll be looking at 4 types of rating: attributive, looking at attributes, behaviors, results, and quality. Our text provides key ingredients for our decision making at table 8.1 on page 241. And you may want to get your book out and take a look at it as we go through. This will be the hub of our wagon wheel as we go through the discussions. The left-hand column, the approach, are the 5 options we'll be discussing. This is table 8.1, but I've got it in plain black and white so it's easier to write on. Where are we going to with this chart? Let's start breaking it into bite-sized chunks and get a feel for why we have 5 different methods. The first method is ranking. It's comparing. And then we can draw a line. And the other 4 approaches or methods are ratings: attributes, behavioral, results, and quality. For the first 2, attribute and behavior, we do a lot of observing. Managers or evaluators have to do a lot of observing of attributes and behaviors. It kind of tapers off for results and quality. Attributes are who you are. Behavioral is what you do. Now we can draw a line, and the next 2 methods or approaches are more using reports. Other people will be feeding into evaluators what are the results and the qualities. So results are what you achieve, and qualities are actually quantitative results, the numbers. Another way of describing the different chunks is that in the ratings, attributes and behaviors are outputs. Here's what you did to get results. And results and quality are outcomes. We're not necessarily sure what you did to get there, but we know the results. So as we go through these eaches, take a look at they are different. So we'll start at the very top with ranking, and then we'll work our way through the 4 types of ratings. And notice that there are advantages and disadvantages, pluses and minuses, and characteristics as we look at observations versus reports, outputs versus outcomes. Here we go. Back to our basic chart from our textbook, and looking across the top band, the first approach is comparative. A simpler way of saying comparative will just be ranking. Ranking could take 3 forms. Simple ranking is just putting in number 1, number 2, all the way to the bottom. Forced distribution assigns a certain percentage of employees into each category for a set of categories. So instead of, if you had 15 employees from 1 to 15 in simple ranking, we could say we're going to have 5 categories: the very top, almost to the top, in the middle, almost to the bottom, and bottom. And then you would have, if you had 15 employees, 3 employees would be put in each of the 5 categories. Paired comparison is you're comparing one to another, taking each of your employees and comparing them one to another, and then who is at the top based upon paired comparison. So 3 methods for using ranking. Let's work through an example to take a look at ranking comparisons, and then what's some advantages and disadvantages of doing comparative rankings. So let's say our task as an instructor is to assign grades given 22 students and 12 grade brackets. So in our table on the left, I have 12 grade brackets. In the middle is the letter grade associated with the 12 brackets. Number 1 is an A. Number 2 is A minus. Number 3 is B plus. It works its way down to number 11 is D minus, and number 12 is F. Well, I have 22 students. Why don't I take their numerical scores at the end of the course and assign letter grades based upon these rankings? So one top student gets an A, and the student with the second highest score goes into category 2 as an A minus. And then the third and fourth student by score would then get a B plus. And the number 5th and 6th student would get a B, and all the way down. And as I get to the bottom, number 19 and 20 in the ranking for the students get a D minus, and the bottom two get a 21 and 22 would get Fs. So what's the advantage of having ranking for assigning letter grades to students? Well, it's simple. Just tell me the numerical score, put it into the table, and there's their letter grade. It's easy to implement, and I can give specific feedback. Here's your score, here's where you were on the ranking, therefore here's your letter grade. So how do you feel about that? Should we use it in this course? Well, a disadvantage would be, does it fit with strategy? In other words, supposing that the bottom student got an 85%. They learned 85% of the material. Yeah, but everybody else was ahead of them, so they get an F. So there's probably, doesn't fit with strategy, because I like people to be rewarded for what they earn and what they do in the course. And the bottom line is acceptability. Will the rated person, the evaluatees, accept the result? So let me see if I can think about what you're thinking right now if I used ranking in this course. No, thank you. Don't like it. So it's easy, but it has an acceptability issue. Now, before you say you totally don't like evaluation by ranking and you feel it's all death, doom, and destruction, it does have its utility. So take a step back and think about this from a human resources perspective. Inside our interrelated functions circle, we would be using evaluations during selections. We rank candidates as this group of candidates look like they're really got potential. These are okay. These others, they just not a good fit. And then we start saying, I can only make one job offer. I've got to start getting down to the top one. We would be using ranking in development. Who would be the real top people that we feel should be doing other bigger work or other work inside the organization beyond their job description? So we're looking at who are the top performers. We would use ranking during downsizing or separations. We would be looking based upon length of service or their evaluations, how many discipline actions they've gotten, and so on. So we're evaluating by ranking sometimes when we go through downsizing. What about incentives? Only certain people would get the top incentives when we start looking at compensation and rewards. So do think about ranking as one of your options. Maybe not always in performance evaluation, but it has utility in your human resources functions. Thought you'd like to know. So let's move along from ranking to our other options, which will be in rating against a uniform standards instead of against each employee. So off for now to rating evaluations for attributive behavior, results, and quality. So as we're making mental notes about Table 8.1, We've completed comparative approach, the ranking, and we can note that we are going to look at 4 rating methods. The rating methods, as a reminder, are attributive, who you are, behavioral, what you do, results, what you achieve, and then it's called quality, but it uses a tremendous amount of quantitative measures, numbers, numerical data, and measurements. So let's take a look in detail now at attribute, who you are. Your textbook provides a lot more detail. I'm just doing the summary here. So take a look in the upper right. There's the page numbers to get a lot more information. So rating individual by attributes, such as a graphic rating scale, looking at traits, or a mixed standard scale, using several statements to describe traits. This figure from your textbook shows the performance dimensions down the left-hand column, and then the rating across the top. So an evaluator, a manager, would have to take their information they've gathered about you by observing you on knowledge and what would be your rating, and ability to communicate, use of your judgment. So graphic rating scale for traits. This figure in your textbook is an example of a mixed standard scale. It's got different traits, but they look at different subjects in different ways. So it's a mix, but it's still the managers using their judgment and observations to give feedback based upon a scale for who you are and what is being observed. Just a quick look ahead. Notice that I have not brought up all the words to the right, and those are the criteria for evaluation. That'll be in part number 2. So don't lose that. We'll come back to this table. Well, there's attributes. Let's move on to behavioral. Behavioral, what you do. Rating individual by behaviors has one method called critical incident, which is a fancy way of saying examples. It's just that either an observer observes an event, or the actual person being rated comes back with a report. Let me tell you what I did. And that's how it gets into the record and people provide feedback. So critical incident method, it's also used for an interview, and that's where I get my PARS examples from. So getting examples of what you do. Another style is called behaviorally anchored rating scale, where an observation or a report comes in and then the behavior is plotted against the scale. This figure from your textbook is an example of a behavioral anchored rating scale. Each of the little descriptors on the right is an anchor, and people can read the descriptor and go, well, I observed at what level? What descriptor almost matches what I observed? And it sort of guides the evaluator on where the event lies on a scale. Behaviorally anchored rating scale. St. Ambrose uses rubrics to guide evaluation for writing, oral presentations, group work. Well, these rubrics are, if you look at them, are actually a form of behaviorally anchored rating scale. Continuing on with our ratings by behaviors is the behavioral observation scale. All behaviors necessary for effective performance are rated. It's a little more complex but comprehensive. Also, the manager is asked to rate the frequency at which employees exhibit the desired behavior. On the right, we have organizational behavior modification. How do we get teams to change an organization? So we're looking at how organizations behave as a group, hopefully as a team. This figure from our textbook is an example of a behavior observation scale. Ratings by behaviors. What you do. So we've covered attributes and behaviors, and these are outputs. Now start drawing a line. We're going to move along to the bottom two of our rating methods. The mental dividing line is we're looking at the top two, and we're looking at traits, attributes, and behaviors. And we do a lot of that by observing, and we're measuring outputs. We're going to go to the bottom two now for results and quality. We're going to do a lot of records and reports, or it's capable of being measured through records and reports. And we're now looking at outcomes. Results, what you achieve. A management practice for evaluation based upon results is management by objectives. People at each level of the organization set goals in a process that flows from top to bottom so that all levels are contributing aligned to the organization's overall goals. These goals become the standards for evaluating each employee's performance. And the older term is MBO. So we're reminding ourselves that we're looking for a method that aligns organizational objectives through the division and teams down to the individual, and we have alignments. And MBO can do that. A more recent term would be management by objective and results. It's a result type measure. So you may also see it as MBOR. So results, which is an outcome measure. And now let's move along to quality. The generic title is quality, but as you do more and more research in it, it is a lot of quantity. You're going to quantify activities and measure by numbers. Quality. One form of this performance management method is the Principles of Total Quality Management, or TQM, which provides methods for performance measurement and management. With TQM, performance measures combine attributes and results, subjective feedback, but they also put in it statistical quality control. These are just a few examples, but you would be looking at your outcomes and would be asking the quantifying of your ratings, such as return on investment, comparison between objective and achievements, turnover rates, mean time to recruit, average time to hire and place, meeting sales projection, cost as a percentage of sales, customer satisfaction ratings, ratio analyses, error rates. You're taking your activities and quantifying them and then seeing if you can't do better each iteration. Want to learn more? Go right to the source, the American Society for Quality, or ASQ. You'll learn a lot about the founder of Total Quality Management, W. Edwards Deming, and his statistical process control methods. So the website is asq.org, and you'll find it in your Chapter 8 additional resources. Well, there you have it. Would you like to use simple ranking only, or one rating only, or some combination? I have on there the grade scale for the course, which I got from the St. Ambrose University Student Handbook. And I'm actually quantifying results and then translating that into a letter grade. So I'm starting with a quantity, which would be quality, and then looking what you actually achieve. And hopefully I get a result. So Believe it or not, your rating scale is more of a results and quality combo. So think about it. You might use more than one method. Well, we've taken a tour of Table 8.1 for the approaches, that left-hand column, and we're trying to think about, what methods would your organization use to evaluate the performance of your focus job? There's part of your shopping list. The next part of the lecture deals with the criteria which you see across the top there. So each method needs to be evaluated by what it does or does not provide to the raters. I'll see you in the next part where we look at the criteria for effective performance management, as shown on the slide. Here are my references for this part of the lecture, and I'll see you soon in part number 2.